Take a network break. I'm Drew Conry Murray.
I'm Jonna Johnson. Grab a pumpkin spice donut, or don't, they're gross. And let's kick up some autumn leaves around this week's news roundup. We'll be talking about silicon announcements from Cisco, Broadcom, and AMD, some enterprise AI announcements from Google and Salesforce, and a whole lot more. But first, if you like Network Break, please check out our other podcasts, including Day 2 DevOps, Heavy Networking, IPv6 Buzz, Heavy Strategy, Network Automation Nerds, and Packet Protector. You'll get nerdy tech analysis and compelling conversations about infrastructure, cloud, professional development, leadership, and more. Find them all at packetpushers.net. But first, Drew, I think we have some follow up.
Yeah, so from episode 546, we had talked about Cato announcing a browser extension. During that conversation, we mentioned that Palo Alto Networks, the idea with the Cato's browser extension is that it can let you drive web traffic into the Cato cloud for security inspection. We mentioned that Palo Alto Networks offers a full custom security browser, like not just an extension, a full browser. But we were talking about how it might be hard to get users to adopt an entirely different browser given how like tightly coupled people's workflows these days are now to the browser they love and adore, and you can't pry it out of their hands. This listener wrote, first as a previous network engineer, which is now a software engineer and still listen to your podcast. Ouch. Not sure what he means by ouch, but hopefully
Oh,
it's
because we sort of dinged. We said something about software engineers who used to be network engineers or something like that.
okay. I wasn't sure if he's like, why am I still listening to your podcast? But he is so great. He said, second, the Palo Alto browser is based on Chromium, which means you can import configurations from your favorite browser. And a note that he does work for Palo Alto Networks, but he just wanted to put that out there. We do appreciate the follow up. It's more information to have, so much appreciated.
Yeah,
Um,
no, that's good to know. And
yeah.
there you have it.
And if you hear
All right.
anything that prompts a correction, a query, a question, or a comment, you can hit us up, packetpushers.net/FU. The FU's for follow up, and we do really appreciate when people reach out.
Okay. Well, let's jump into our red alerts. Juniper is doing a batch mode disclosure of CVEs. There were 1,092 CVEs created last week and 2,665 updated. Of those, 369 were critical with CVSS scores of 9 or higher, and 25 scored 10 out of 10. We're drawing attention to the red alerts to Juniper, partly for how unusual it is to find them releasing critical CVEs, and partly because they just released so many of them.
Mhm.
On October 9th, Juniper published 40 CVEs at once. And note, these are the first since July, with
Mhm.
some of the alerts relating to Junos and Junos evolved operating systems, others to applications. Of particular note, two critical alerts, that is CVE 2025 59974 and CVE 2025 59978 for the network management platform Juniper Space. Both CVEs detail vulnerabilities due to improper neutralization of inputs during web page generation, in both cases resulting in the ability of an attacker to get commands executed in someone else's privilege environment, including that of the system administrator. In both cases, guess what the fix is? It is to upgrade to the latest release of the product, 24.1 release 1, which was released in September, which kind of explains why they didn't announce it back in July, because the fix was released in September. Anyway, the links are there in the show notes, and you can peruse all 40 CVEs from Juniper should you desire.
That is a
Um,
lot of CVEs to dump all at once.
yeah, well, that's kind of it's par for the course in the way Juniper does things. They're very structured. Their claim to fame way back when was that they had a very structured operating system for their routers. And I do remember back in the day, Cisco used to laugh about having its own Bear Stearns version of the OS. That's how undisciplined they were back in the day. So Cisco succeeded by imposing a lot of structure. This is an example of structure, almost Germanic in its rigor.
Okay.
Um, so another update, that SonicWall cloud crackup thing back in September, it was a lot worse than initially thought. We talked about this when SonicWall warned users on September 17th that some of its cloud backups of some of its firewall configurations might have been compromised. The company said about 5% of users were affected. On October 8th, they'd updated that to note that after analyzing the data in more detail with incident response company Mandiant, the breach had actually affected all of the users, not
Oof.
5%, but 100% of the users of the cloud backup service. So, yes, if you were using the backup service, you probably want to take steps, and links are in the show notes.
That is quite a change from 5% to 100%.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Yeah, definitely check that. Let's dive into some news. Cisco's announced its new 8223 router. It's offering 51.2 terabits per second throughput. Cisco's going after hyperscalers that need to connect AI data centers across a WAN because as the size of and demand for AI workloads increases, individual data centers are reaching the limits of their compute capacity and power. So providers are looking to distribute AI workloads across multiple sites. Cisco says they've got a router for them. This is a 3RU box, got 64 ports of 800 gig links using coherent optics. Cisco says the router can connect data centers up to 1,000 kilometers apart, which is about 621 miles. This router is built on Cisco's new custom chip, the Silicon One P200. Cisco says the P200 offers deep buffers to absorb any traffic surges from AI training. They're also touting improved power efficiency. Cisco says the 8223 router uses 65% less power than a Cisco 8804, which came out 2 years ago. It was a 10RU box, so it does sound like there would be some power savings, but they've also they said shrunk all of the silicon in there from 92 chips down to one chip, so that's impressive. One thing I noticed is that the new router is rolling out with support for the Sonic network OS on first release. iOS XR is in the works, they say, so debuting with Sonic first. I thought that was telling. Jonna, any comments?
Not really. I've been racking my brains to think of anything other than, well, makes sense to me. So there you go. Makes
Okay.
sense to me. It's more power, more network power, less energy. Makes perfect sense for them to be doing that.
Yeah, and you can see where they think the money is first. I think by debuting with the Sonic OS, that's probably definitely aimed at hyperscalers as opposed to their typical enterprise customers. They are coming second.
Yep.
Sticking with silicon, Broadcom's now shipping the Tomahawk 6 Davison ASIC that provides 102.4 terabits of Ethernet throughput with co-packaged optics. The chip's also aimed at AI infrastructure where performance is critical and power consumption is monstrous. So Broadcom's touting both the total throughput and the improved power efficiency of this new chip. Broadcom says the ASIC consumes 70% less power in optical interconnect than typical pluggable optics because of that co-packaged optics design.
Wait a minute, didn't we just announce this? Oh wait. Yeah, right. More throughput, less power. There we go.
Right, there's a theme.
There's a theme.
Moving on, AMD has struck what strikes me as an unusual deal with OpenAI. The AI company has pledged to purchase and deploy 6 gigawatts of AMD GPUs over multiple years. And in exchange, OpenAI has the option to buy up to 160 million shares of AMD stock at 1 penny per share. Those shares will vest if and when specific milestones are reached. In a statement, AMD said, quote, the first tranche vests with the initial 1 gigawatt deployment, additional tranches vesting as purchases scale up to 6 gigawatts. AMD shares also have to reach a specific target for this deal to work. I've got some more details, but John, I just want to get your initial impression here.
Yeah, that is weird. And this is where my ability as a finance analyst comes to its finite end because I haven't the vaguest clue why they would do that. It doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know what's going on here. Perhaps a listener who has a better finance background can weigh in on what they think is happening. I would highlight, though, that this is typical of a lot of what happens during bubbles, which is if Drew, you and I are separate companies, I promise to buy a bunch of stuff from you, you promise to buy a bunch of stuff from me. All it does is transfer that stuff from my bottom line to my top line and your bottom line to your top line. So it looks like you're making a ton of money when in fact you're not really. And I remember during the last major bubble, which was the .com bubble, I remember when AT&T and IBM bought a ton of stuff from each other. Basically, IBM agreed to buy all of its telecommunication services from AT&T, and AT&T outsourced all of its data center operations to IBM, which basically meant the same money was being spent. No new money was being generated, but it
Right.
looked like both
Right.
companies were making, had a massive, $100 million new client. And I see a lot of that. I smell this as though there's something around this that makes it look like that, but I can't quite figure out why it would be a penny a share. Like what? What do you think?
The penny a share. I was like, why is AMD valuing itself as a penny stock? This is crazy. I read a story in MSNBC. It says if the share target and all the other milestones are achieved, OpenAI could hold AMD shares valued at $96 billion. NAI would also have an approximately 10% stake in AMD. So it seems like if anyone's coming out of the deal looking good, it would be OpenAI if all these milestones are reached. My assumption is what AMD is hoping to get out of this is one, knocking NVIDIA off the front page of the GPU wars for a day or two with this story, and two, getting its foot in the door with OpenAI with the hopes that maybe something else will also get sold, or signaling to other buyers of GPUs that, oh, AMD is also somebody we should be looking at. But I think your analysis strikes me as correct that they're essentially just like doing an exchange that doesn't increase revenue for anybody. Although in the long run, if AMD does meet these milestones, it's going to hold a lot of very valuable AMD stock.
Yeah, it really just smells like stock pumping or something, but we'll see. And of course, if there's anyone that can see anything that we're not seeing, please do write in on the
Please
follow-up.
do.
Uh, on news that I'm a lot more comfortable talking about from AMD, they are pushing sub-microsecond Ethernet latencies even lower. With the release of AMD's X4 series Ethernet controllers this week, the company claims to reduced its layer 2 network latencies by 40% compared to the previous X2 series of products. It also claims overall performance improvements of 200% compared to the previous generation. Aiming to secure and expand its very large footprint on stock exchange trading systems, AMD says that systems built with SolarFlare X4 and their EPY 4005 CPUs have 12% lower latency than their competition when handling 4-byte packets. AMD got the SolarFlare technology in its acquisition of Xilinx in 2020. As we all know, latency really matters when you're doing financial transactions.
Uh-huh,
So
uh-huh.
12% lower latency sounds like it's not much, but it is a whole heck of a lot. And that is some good engineering right there.
Yeah, for sure. Those microseconds matter in these kind of trading deals, so makes sense.
Yep.
Moving on, network management vendor SolarWinds has announced an AI agent to support human operators in observability, incident response, and remediation. SolarWinds says the agent provides a natural language interface that teams can use to ask questions, create dashboards on the fly, and generate reports. SolarWinds offered an example of an operator asking, "Are there any services that need attention?" SolarWinds also says that during an incident, the AI agent will proactively post diagnostics and root cause analysis into Slack without the need to be prompted. The company says it's also expanded its AI capabilities across the portfolio with new AI capabilities to do things like correlate anomalies, alerts, and events, and expand monitoring across metrics. And John, I heard a chuckle there.
Yeah, I'm just laughing about the fact that on the one hand, we're hearing all about, Slack overload and how people are piling stuff into Slack, and now you've got your AI weighing in as well. So this will be fun,
Right.
fun to see. It's sort of like, we actually create separate Slack channels for automated alerts and things like that, so that we don't overload or lose sight of something that's actually important.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's something you'll be able to do.
Yes. And later in the year, SolarWinds says it's going to roll out something it's calling AI Log Insights. So they'll use AI to analyze and process logs, and the goal is to provide better root cause summaries to help speed resolutions. As part of this push into AI, SolarWinds is adopting MCP, or the Model Context Protocol. This is a protocol. It's not an official protocol. It's more an open framework that supports agent to agent. Well, I guess it's a protocol, but it's not standard yet. But it supports agent to agent communication, and the goal is here for SolarWinds to provide support for folks building in-house agents that are custom to interact with SolarWinds data, and then maybe eventually allow third-party vendor agents to interact with SolarWinds. So SolarWinds trying to lay some groundwork here.
Which is actually good because the next couple of announcements really have to do with how the next world order is shaping up. Essentially, what you're seeing here is that the major vendors are all collectively making platform plays based on AI to become what I call the SAP of the 21st century. Meaning, you're going to hear from Salesforce, you're going to hear from Google, and from Amazon that they're all creating AI-based automation and workflow management for enterprises. Each and every one, along with Microsoft, of course, want to be the workflow engine and the automation engine of your organization.
Mhm.
This is actually a great use of AI, and it's certainly SolarWinds would be useful to be able to integrate into that. So I think their MCP move is a very good one. But it poses some real dangers to enterprise users, which I'll get to in a second. But the first announcement is that Salesforce is now going after ServiceNow, entering the ITSM space. On October 9th, Salesforce announced the availability of Agentforce IT Service, which it describes as an agent-first, conversational-first IT support product suite, aka ServiceNow. What that means in practice is customer organizations will be able to use Slack to communicate, and of course, Slack comes back because Salesforce owns it, to communicate with conversational AI agents that will in turn utilize a new collection of SME AI agents and ITSM database standards like a CMDB and an enterprise asset and service dependency graph to provide service management activities like ticket creation and management, so squarely into ServiceNow's space. Knowledge-based creation, proactive communication to users who might be affected by tickets in flight, and more. This is a Slack-first offering, which makes sense given the fact that the Slack installed base is about 9 times the size of the Salesforce customer base. The introduction can be seen as a direct response to ITSM giant ServiceNow's entry into the CRM space earlier this year. Early adopters, according to Salesforce, include UNESCO and Piedmont Healthcare. There's a link in the show notes, but basically the gist is the battle lines are drawn, the boxing gloves are on, and we're ready to go, whatever cute cliche you want to put in here.
Yeah, interesting. I always love to see more competition. Salesforce will have its hands full going up against particularly ServiceNow, which is, the 900-pound gorilla in this environment. I guess the leverage they do have is that we have seen the development of what's called SlackOps, with Slack essentially becoming kind of a portal for a lot of IT service management happening. But there's just a lot of really kind of difficult, crunchy backend stuff like a CMDB, like having tie-ins to all of your IT infrastructure, all of that telemetry, all of that analysis and capability. So is Salesforce top of mind when an IT organization is thinking about help desk or ITSM? I don't know, but it doesn't hurt to try.
Yeah, and of my clients that are using both Salesforce and ServiceNow, it seems like ServiceNow still has the upper hand because they are aggressively going after AI as well. And I have some more thoughts on this big picture, but let's jump into the next one. Google has announced Gemini Enterprise and the small business version, Gemini Business. And AWS has announced QuickSuite. In a move that's half repackaging and half product announcement, Google unveiled Gemini Business and Gemini Enterprise, which bring together the company's AI offerings in a single place, quote end quote. Products like Gemini CLI and Google Vids will be integrated and accessible through Gemini Enterprise. According to Google Cloud CEO Thomas Kurian, he said, by bringing all of these components together through a single interface, Gemini Enterprise transforms how teams work. Where have we heard that before?
Right.
It's powered by Gemini models and connects to an enterprise's data sources. Wait a second, where did we hear that? Gemini always connected to Google's workspace services such as Docs and Drive, but Enterprise can now grab information from Microsoft 365 or other platforms like Salesforce, which, as we saw above, is itself using AI to get into the enterprise space in a new way. The idea behind Gemini Enterprise is to offer a no-code workbench for any user to surface information and to orchestrate agents for automation. The platform includes pre-built agents for deep research and insights, but customers can also bring in their own or third-party agents. Administrators can manage these agents and workflows through a visual governance framework within Gemini Enterprise. And of course, no announcement is complete without mentioning customers. Google said some customers have already begun using Gemini Enterprise, including Macquarie Bank, legal AI provider Harvey, and Banco BV. Separately, AWS just announced QuickSuite, which is AWS's front-facing agentic application for enterprises that builds on Bedrock, which is a back-end agentic AI application. So links are in the show notes, but the big thing to take away from this is enterprise platform providers are now using AI to deliver prepackaged and customizable automation and workflows. So what this really does is, as I mentioned earlier, position Google against AWS, against Salesforce, against ServiceNow, against Microsoft for control of the enterprise workflow. Again, think of it as SAP for the new era, but the major tech giants are battling it out. From my perspective, the challenge for enterprise users is twofold. One is whether or not to trust any of these solutions at all.
Right.
On the plus side, they're fully customizable, unlike SAP, which kind of forced enterprises into an SAP-centric set of workflows. On the minus side, they are, like all AI-based solutions, super buggy, due to hallucinations and other built-in concerns. And I'll give an example in a moment, but Drew, I just wanted to stop and take your thoughts on this.
So is the idea here with the Gemini Enterprise, you mentioned a no-code workbench. Does this mean folks would be able to sort of vibe code up some kind of application that would draw on information stored in Google and I guess other places like Microsoft 365?
Yeah, I mean, the basic idea is, hey, I'm in accounting or whatever, and I need to see, records of everything that got sold here, mapped against our inventory, mapped against our current price for replacing those widgets or whatever they are. How do I do that? Oh, I can just gen it all up, and all of a sudden I've got a report that gets me everything I need and is accurate in real time. That's the big gotcha with some of the older approaches is you can do almost magic with a lot of these solutions, but you actually have to be a genius in their particular operations. I've worked on Salesforce, ServiceNow. If you know what you're doing, you have enormous amounts of power, but it requires specialized insight. So essentially what happens is there's a cadre of people who know the platform app, and so the workflow process becomes poor Ms. Finance person has to go to the Salesforce guru, ask for that information. The guru says, "Well, I'll put it on the list of reports that I'll generate for you. How does December sound?"
Right.
And now that person, in theory, can generate it himself or herself.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess what I'm hearing is it's sort of like this is what big data and big data analytics was kind of supposed to do for us. But
Correct. I think the magic here is, the natural language interface, which makes it just tub loads easier for anyone to do anything. And that's, as much as I dump on AI, the natural language interface is really very needed. But I would circle back that, the challenge for enterprises is kind of, as I said, twofold. Number one, do you trust any of these guys? And I just want to highlight something else. This was originally a news item for us, and we kind of knocked it down in importance because the Gemini Enterprise was more important. But Google recently declined to fix an ASCII smuggling bug in its Gemini software. Just a reminder, ASCII smuggling, as cute as it sounds, is when an attacker uses invisible Unicode characters to alter how a machine interprets a block of text. By jamming prompting instructions into unseen Unicode in emails and calendar invites, security researcher Firetail was able to get Gemini to get Google Calendar and Gmail to alter meeting details, like who issued the invitation, to disclose non-public information, and more. Google's response to the whole thing is, so what? That is literally what they said. It's social engineering. We don't need to fix the bug. Deal with it. So my reaction is this is not going to be unique to Google. You can mess with AI across the board this way. So as you're thinking about picking a platform to make your bet on, one of the worries is that not only will you get hallucinations and wrong information, but it is certainly generating a lot of vulnerabilities that you may or may not know how to address. The second piece is if you decide to go with a platform, which one?
right.
And again, what's happening here is enterprises are kind of enterprise platform vendors are squaring off, and each one of them is vying to become your feudal overlord. Are you going to be on Team Microsoft or Team Salesforce or Team ServiceNow, Team AWS or Team Google?
Right.
You might get away with being on two of them, but you're certainly not going to be making a full-throated investment into all of them.
No.
So you're going to have to pick which vendor you actually trust the most to deliver an inherently buggy, untrustworthy solution, which is, I mean, it really does smell like feudal overlord scenario, because it's like all feudal overlords have badness. Which one do you think has the least
Right.
badness per most goodness is really what you're asking.
I guess vendors are always trying to be, sort of the one Uber shop where you go for everything. So I'm not surprised to see them try to execute this play via AI. But yeah, you're right. Folks in tech have always had to decide who is the least bad of my options to get me what I need. So just apply those skills in this case. I think one of the other questions I have is that it sounds great to say, yeah, we can unleash sort of like regular non-developers to like use these tools to get the information, the reports, the data they need. The question is, what kind of shape is your data in that you can rely on the output that you're getting? I think that's one of the reasons data analytics ran into trouble. Like there's if you're going to do this right, there's a lot of data engineering, data science that has to go into it in terms of is the data clean, is it normalized, deduped, all that kind of stuff. So
I think that's an excellent point, and I'm glad you made that. Yes, all of these apps are going to show you the weakness of your data. You know, I think they're also, and I will hammer on AI. They're going to show you the weakness of AI as well, because never forget that hallucinations are a built-in part of
mhm,
LLMs. You can't get rid of them.
yes.
So now you have data that's untrustworthy because A, it's actually bad data, or B, the LLM is making it up. So now you have this problem that people are
Or it's simply
like
just
building.
non-deterministic in that you can ask it the same question and get different results each time. So that's problematic if you're like, show me last week's sales numbers.
Exactly. And I think that's the big takeaway here that people need to be worried about. It's all well and good that these companies are saying let's make your enterprise core process platform super customizable, easy to use, get rid of the energy barrier of training. People can just jump in and start creating workflows. Yippee. But when you realize that you're basically basing this entire thing on a foundation of sand, okay, if you're an advertising agency, not to ding my clients who are advertising agencies, it may not be the end of the world if you're promoting, if you make a mistake here in the process. But, if you're a hospital, if you're an energy company, if you're doing something that is actually sort of semi-mission critical, maybe you're building airplanes, yeah, I would not want you to be using an agentic AI based platform that compounds your existing troubles with bad data by adding hallucinated data and fake data.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
it just it seems really disturbing right here. That said, I will say I have a friend who sadly is deceased now, but he and I used to take multi-hour walks and argue about things. And about 5 years ago, we were arguing about AI and what the future would look like with AI. And one of his points was the the best place that you want AI is at the core of your enterprise, figuring out what the workflows actually are and helping you optimize them. And I can't disagree with that. There is an element of, because in a lot of enterprises there are unknown workflows happening
Hmm.
because there's the official stuff that you're supposed to be doing, and then there's what you need to do to get it done. Oh yeah, go see Sue. She's the
Right.
person that can sign off on that, right?
Right.
And it's good to have a tool that will capture all of that and suggest ways to improve it.
Hmm.
So, there is a silver lining here, but yeah, I think anyone listening to us who's in the position of selecting a platform needs to think long and hard about what you want that platform to be doing, how good your data is, and how much you trust the vendor.
You said something I thought was interesting that it will show you the weakness of your data, which could be a good thing if you are willing to then strengthen it, right? So maybe you can almost think of this as like the first round is a diagnostic exercise.
Yeah, yes. I mean, I guess sort of again, big picture. You can consider it a diagnostic exercise, like how good is my data, or as purists would say, are my data? What are my real workflows and processes as
Hmm.
opposed to the ones that we sort of publish?
Hmm.
I think that's, what's the is, dirty underbelly, so to speak, of the enterprise operations, and how can we improve
Yeah.
it? The problem is, it's that how we improve it. Like, AI can make all sorts of suggestions about how to improve processes, some of which might actually work. So that's good, I guess. But it's then going to go and hallucinate things. So even if you have perfectly clean data, you still can't trust it. And oh, by the way, you're generating, as we just saw with the Google Gemini weakness, you're generating vulnerabilities that can be exploited.
Hmm.
So it's like phase one might be diagnostics, and then phase two is supposed to be fixing those diagnostics. But unfortunately, it's sort of injecting more weaknesses into the system. So I mean, I don't know how you escape from it, because this is the direction that all the platform vendors are going, clearly.
Hmm.
So you will be doing this, but I just don't want people to think that AI is going to solve all their weaknesses,
It's not
solve all their
magic. Yeah,
problems.
it's not magic.
It's not magic, and it's in fact got weaknesses that if you were to take the the branding away from it and say, hey, I'm going to sell you a platform that does X, Y, and Z at the risk of PD and Q, most people would look at that and say, no, PD and Q sound pretty bad because they're things like make stuff up that's not real.
Mhm.
No, I don't think I want that in my enterprise operating system. If that's really what it
Mhm.
is the enterprise operating system.
Right.
So yeah, um, it's worth thinking about, but it's very interesting to see all this stuff happening at once, and companies that we never considered competitors in the past are now, clearly competitors.
We're in interesting times for sure. So
We sure are.
approach with eyes open. All right, that wraps up today's show. Jonna, where can folks find you online?
Please hit me up at nemerdes.substack.com. That is where we're publishing. You can always find me on LinkedIn as well, and happy to chat with you.
I'm Drew Conry Murray. I'm on Blue Sky at DrewCM, blogging at packetpushers.net, also on LinkedIn. And if you're in the mood for a spooky read this Halloween season, check out my novel, The Haunting of Edward Drake. Combines some horror with historical fiction. You can find it on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. As we mentioned, packetpushers.net/fu. If you have comments, corrections, queries, questions, we love to hear from you. And don't forget, we've got merch, more than a dozen podcasts you can subscribe to, an industry blog, 2 weekly newsletters, a community Slack group, our YouTube channel, an IRC group, and more. Find it all at packetpushers.net. All free, no login required. As always, thanks for listening.